Section 1. A historical backdrop. Decades of conflict. The Israeli-Palestinian conflict is a deeply rooted struggle with a long and complex history. It is rooted in competing claims to the same land, with both Palestinians and Israelis tracing their historical and religious ties to the region. The conflict intensified in the 20th century, marked by wars, displacement, and ongoing tensions. Following the 1948 Arab-Israeli War and the subsequent creation of the State of Israel, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians were displaced from their homes, becoming refugees. The 1967 Six-Day War further altered the landscape, with Israel occupying the West Bank and Gaza Strip. These territories, home to millions of Palestinians, have been points of contention ever since. Despite decades of negotiations and international efforts, a lasting solution remains elusive. Palestinians continue to live under Israeli occupation, facing restrictions on movement, access to resources, and political autonomy. The ongoing conflict has resulted in countless lives lost and widespread human suffering on both sides. Section 2, 2024, A Year of Escalation and Despair. The year 2024 witnessed a dramatic escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, marked by heightened violence and a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. Tensions soared following a series of events, including the expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank and clashes between Palestinians and Israeli forces. The situation in Gaza deteriorated rapidly, with reports of intensified airstrikes and a tightening blockade. Hospitals struggled to cope with the influx of casualties, and access to essential supplies, including food and medicine, dwindled. The United Nations issued warnings of a looming humanitarian catastrophe, urging immediate international action. As the conflict spiraled, allegations of war crimes and human rights abuses surfaced, adding to the international outcry. The escalating violence and humanitarian crisis in 2024 underscored the urgent need for a peaceful resolution to the conflict. Section 3. Voices from the Ground. Palestinians Speak Out. Amidst the escalating conflict, the voices of Palestinians, particularly those in Gaza, offered harrowing accounts of the situation. Mothers described the agonizing fear of shielding their children from bombs. Families shared stories of losing loved ones, their homes reduced to rubble. "We are living in a nightmare," shared a resident of Gaza City, her voice trembling. "Every day we fear for our lives and the lives of our children. The world must hear our cries and act to end this suffering." These first-hand accounts provided a stark reminder of the human cost of the conflict, emphasizing the urgent need for international attention and intervention. Their stories served as a powerful call for justice and an end to the violence that has plagued their lives for far too long. Section 4. The World Reacts. International Perspectives and Condemnation. The escalating conflict in 2024 drew widespread international condemnation, with numerous countries and organizations calling for an immediate ceasefire and a return to negotiations. The United Nations Security Council convened emergency sessions to address the crisis, highlighting the gravity of the situation. Human rights groups condemned the violence and called for investigations into alleged war crimes. Amnesty International released a report documenting human rights abuses, including the targeting of civilians and the use of disproportionate force. The international community grappled with how to effectively respond to the crisis. While some nations advocated for strong sanctions against Israel, others emphasized the need for diplomacy and dialogue. The divergent perspectives underscored the complexity of the situation and the challenge of finding a path to a lasting solution. Section 5. Analyzing allegations of genocide. Evidence and arguments. The term genocide carries immense weight, demanding rigorous analysis and careful consideration of evidence. While the situation in Gaza in 2024 raised serious concerns about potential human rights violations, applying the label of genocide requires meeting specific legal criteria as defined by the 1948 Genocide Convention. Legal experts and scholars engaged in intense debates about the applicability of the term genocide to the situation in Gaza. Arguments centered around the intent to destroy a particular group, the scale and nature of the violence, and the presence of specific acts outlined in the Genocide Convention. While the question of genocide remained a subject of ongoing debate, the gravity of the situation in Gaza was undeniable. The extensive loss of life, the destruction of infrastructure, and the severe humanitarian crisis demanded immediate attention and a concerted effort to prevent further suffering. Section 6. Looking ahead, paths to peace and justice. As the world grappled with the aftermath of the 2024 escalation, the question of how to achieve a lasting peace in the region remained paramount. Finding a solution requires addressing the root causes of the conflict, including the status of Palestinian refugees, the question of Jerusalem, and the issue of settlements. Meaningful dialogue and negotiations between Israeli and Palestinian leaders are essential, with the support and involvement of the international community. A just and sustainable peace requires a commitment to human rights, security, and self-determination for both Palestinians and Israelis. The path to peace is fraught with challenges, but the alternative is a perpetuation of violence and suffering. The international community must work together to support a peaceful resolution, ensuring a future where Palestinians can live in security and dignity. All we need now from everyone is to support the Palestinian cause and prevent their genocide and establishment of the independent state of Palestine. Pray for Palestine.